Last week, we discussed charges filed against Secretary of State Diana Duran. She is facing several charges, including fraud and embezzlement of campaign funds. Also, last week, State Representative Antonio Mo Maestas announced that he had amended his previous campaign finance report to account for money that he did not disclose last year. Now, are elected officials being held accountable for campaign finance reporting? Let's start there with this week's Line Opinion panelists. I'm joined at the table tonight by Daniel Foley, former New Mexico House Minority Whip. Eric Riego, he's back, former New Mexico State Senator, and a whole lot more after that. Sophie Martin, an attorney and editor at DukeCityFix.com, and Merritt Allen is here from Vox Optima. Dan, let me start with you. A very simple question. Clear something up for us non-elected people.
You're actually asking me?
I am.
Wow.
I'm going to ask Eric the same question. What does one do filling out a campaign finance form? What is the form? What does it look like? What do you have to put on there?
I don't know if they've
work?
changed them. When I was in, you basically put down the date you got the money, how much it was, who it was from.
Okay.
That's when the money came in. When the money went out, you put down the date, you put down a little description, and it could be food and how much you spent.
Okay.
It could be gas. I mean, there was no, you got to, like my expense report for work, if I put gas, I got to tell them where I went, who I went to go see, what I went to go do. That's not what you got to do. It is just, I got $1,000 contribution, anonymous. I could put anonymous if I got it anonymous on the date I got it.
Okay.
Then I could go in and say, on another date, I spent $1,000 to buy stamps. I spent $1,000 food, $1,000 clothes. $1,000 donation.
Now, is clothes something that is typically paid for out of campaign
It's
money?
not typically paid for, but you
sort
could.
Of confusing.
Well, the problem is,
public.
the problem is with the general public is there's no real rules of what you can use the money for. It says whatever you use for your campaign. So there are legislators that have said, I will walk through 2 pairs of shoes during the campaign. So I'm buying shoes. I'm buying a suit to go to appearances. I'm buying gas to go places. There's really no rules.
But then, Eric, we've had things like, I don't know, I seem to remember renting fire trucks or something for parades. I mean, it seems very loose what can be determined as campaign expenses. Now, when you were doing this and filling out stuff, that little bit Dan mentioned, the little fill-in-the-blank part, that seems to be where people are getting in trouble. You know what I mean? It seems to be very squishy right there.
So the idea is your treasurer, campaign treasurer, you really shouldn't be doing, but not everybody gets an independent treasurer as any kind of finance or accounting background. I mean, if you're smart, you do.
Right.
I think here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is you have an elected official, sometimes, often of the other party, who sort of presides over, in this case with Secretary Duran, presides over sort of monitoring this stuff.
Right.
We've had a bill, and I had a bill in Senator Feldman for years to do sort of an independent entity to look at this stuff, right? Because you're asking an elected official, sometimes of a different party, to oversee a bunch of partisan elected officials. I've never seen the system work. I actually agree with Dan. There should be more disclosure. It should be easier for the public to get. And yeah, legislators are going to get dinged, but at least people know what's going on.
Right.
I think having it under, especially given the circumstances, we have a partisan elected Secretary of State, including this current one, which I think has been a very partisan Secretary of State, looking at other elected officials for their contributions is just not a good system. We need an independent entity, Ethics Commission office, to be doing this.
Interesting. Merritt, it seems to me this is a function. I'm hearing all this and reading all this, as we all are. It seems simple enough. I'm still confused as how does one get oneself in so much trouble by now? Mo Maestas, for example, it's about $11,000. I can see $1,000 worth of unreported stuff, but $11,000 worth of unreported or unclassified, or whatever you want to say, that seems like an awful lot. That's more than just an error. I'm not saying something about Mo here, but you know what I mean? It just, something doesn't seem quite right there.
Well, to be honest, I went and looked at his reports, and I looked at the amount he'd raised for the campaign. And one of the great things about New Mexico is our politicians are generally local, they care, they're unsophisticated politically. So, it is a clunky system. I've, with a legislator in my family, I've reviewed reports and I've helped out with this. It's a clunky system. It's a system that requires, with the legislator I know, constant calls to Secretary of State's office, including when it's been a Democrat and she's been a Republican, for verification, because I think legislators themselves don't really know what the rules are. I think it's a mushy system that now has complete transparency, and we ought to adjust the system so the fidelity of the system can stand up to the transparency we want.
Good way to put it. So we had the dreaded petty cash. This one always cracks me up. Expenditures under $100. You can spend $100 over and over and over with petty cash a lot of times, end up with a big old, amount of money spent.
True, and
It's
in this day and
interesting.
age, there is some question in my mind about like who doesn't take a credit card, who doesn't,
Right.
why is
People in
petty
line
cash-
at the polls that
Right,
want to vote
thank
for
you.
you.
So I mean, I think
point.
I think sort of to Merit's point, we have transparency up to a point, right? We're asking for a certain amount of reporting, we're getting a certain amount of reporting, but we're not apparently getting everything. And one of the things that's been so fascinating, I think, about the Diana Duran case is this sort of undercurrent of like, well, maybe the legislature will do something about it now. Maybe they will finally get ethics reform. But when you think about every year when ethics reform comes back around, you get these frankly asinine statements from legislators. So sorry, folks, that I trust my colleagues. I should be trusted.
That's right.
I remember one year a legislator going around saying, we're all good Christians here. This is not the basis for an ethical framework. This is the basis for dodging, I think, your responsibilities. And I don't know that I think that we're going to get a whole lot better out of this scandal.
And that's a good point there. Senator Griego, what could improve this? Is it a technology problem? Is it perhaps, you make a good point, I've heard this before too, not everybody hires a finance director and they do it themselves. Is this a third-party system possibly where someone can hire themselves out and help legislators do this for a smaller fee? I mean, in your mind, what could help fix this situation?
Well, I think, again, to ask a state elected official on top of all the other running elections and the other sort of filings and so on to sort of basically police, not very effectively, for all of the former secretaries of state, reports that are often done in handwritten forms. So like some folks, I did mine electronically.
Right.
I was late a few times, so there's this crazy sort of gotcha sort of mentality there. So I think, I really do think it has to be removed and it has to be an independent entity. That legislature can do this. It was one of the bills. Just someone that out of, legislature and the governor appoint a bipartisan group that basically oversees somebody nonpartisan who can sort of make sure to do, a lot of this is technical assistance. A lot of this, I had this experience, just getting somebody to help you. Look, how do I declare this? That's, if they're underfunded, which the Secretary of State often is from the legislature,
Sure.
if it's not their expertise, by the way, they don't have election lawyers who are experts in FEC and those sorts of issues. So I think an independent entity that not just monitors these things, but all of the lobbyist disclosure stuff, all of this stuff, it needs to be independent of any partisan official, funded, overseen, a lot of transparency. And a huge part of what they should do is, to your point about, is technical assistance. Have someone who's got an accounting background saying, look, like for me, I couldn't even figure out how the program works sometimes,
Right.
and thank God I
I've heard
had
that
some people
before.
who could help me with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Dan, could pick up on that too. Again, you guys have been there, we haven't. For legislators, nobody wants to screw things up, but we hear about this all the time.
Oh no, some do.
I was going to say,
No,
maybe
there's
some people do.
There's
want to
some
screw it
that
up.
do.
Yeah.
So obviously I disagree with my colleague Senator Griego. I don't think an independent ethics commission is the problem. I think the problem is the Secretary of State, regardless of who it is, there's no teeth in the law. They can't do anything. I mean, they find out you've done something wrong. They basically can go to the court of public opinion. They got to turn it over to the AG.
Right.
The AG's got to decide if the state reps who are doing his budget are a higher priority than the meth dealers, the child pornography, whatever else they're working on, and it just kind of runs its course. I think an easy step that could take place quickly without creating, because I don't believe that you can ever create a bipartisan anything or a nonpartisan anything. It's, we talked about this in redistricting, and people are like, oh, well, one year there was a bill that said, well, we'll find people that know nothing about politics and put them on the redistricting committee. Yeah, those people are running to the front of the line, right? They want to serve on something they know nothing about. I think if we give the if we give the Secretary of State, whomever it is, some teeth in the law to enforce things, fining ability that they can actually uphold, some other things that they can do, really they don't have any teeth. And I think that would be a step in the right direction to do this. Again,
is there a deterrent out there? Is there a fine big enough that could be a deterrent?
No, because
or is there
the only deterrent is the court of public opinion.
Okay.
But I mean, the problem is that most legislators, like someone said earlier, they're local, they're home. Sure. It's like everything we hear about Congress and the legislature. Their approval rating is horrible. Everybody hates them, but they love theirs. I hate Congress, but I like my congressman. I hate the legislature, but I like my legislator. You know, you go running around out there now. One of the problems in New Mexico is that the problems with campaign financing reports are so bad and so consistent that, you know, you can pretty much run around as elected official and say, I made a couple of mistakes, but I'm not as bad as Eric. So, I mean, you know, and people are like, oh yeah, that's true, okay.
And
there's always, and there's always, I mean, we saw it in the email. You know, Roger Madalena sends out the press release that says, well, okay, I made some mistakes, but go check Andy Nunez. And then Andy's going to come back and say, well, go check. And it's, you know, it's like the tar baby in the briar patch. You know, you start throwing this around and everybody runs from it. And I don't know who's going to want to get it. I will tell you this, there's a lot of folks, I think this is, it's a bipartisan problem, but there's a lot of folks as a non-paid citizen legislature that are making ends meet utilizing their campaign reports.
That's what we're all afraid of. You know, that's what we're all afraid. Let's turn to Secretary of State for a quick second. We've got a couple minutes left on this segment. Sophie Martin, what have we learned now that our Secretary of State is not in office? Things are being done. We see Chief of Staff for the Secretary of State being quoted, taking care of business.
I think one of the big things that New Mexicans have learned is that that being an elected official is a pretty cushy job. I mean, there were intimations of that. I remember when Governor Martinez's calendar was released, and it looked like a pretty easy job. And now we see that the Secretary of State's office seems to run the same as it did when she was there. There's no requirement that she be there. There's apparently no leave policy regarding these elected officials, and so that raises questions about the integrity of the people that we're electing. I don't mean to say. How shall I put this? I mean, we want our elected officials in there working.
Sure.
We probably need to know whether they're doing it, especially when re-election time comes around.
Right.
But I think many people didn't know that that was something to look for.
Right, exactly right. Mayor, pick up on that if you would. What have you gleaned from this situation with the Secretary of State? Is there something we could be doing differently from this point on in that position?
Well, you know, I don't know about that. I have to agree with Dan in that the partisan element is not going to go away, because right now you've got an Attorney General from one party and a Secretary of State of another party, and this Attorney General is going to go after $13,000 of private donations and at the same time leak a deep personal problem that is shocking to the state. But you know, under prior administrations, a Democrat Attorney General couldn't figure out how to proceed with $3 million of missing money from a Secretary of State from his own party. So, you know, I think Dan's point about teeth in the law and some accountability and
what do you make of Eric's point of an independent group looking over all these things?
How are you going to have an independent group if they're from the state?
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a state senator who's the former chief lobbyist of a Democratic-based county clerk association, because county clerks in the state need a lobbyist. I mean, there is no independent.
Interesting.
I don't think.
Finish up for us on that one if you would.
I think, first of all, they both sort of reinforce my point, is that as long as you have this partisan issue in there, in statewide offices, it's going to be an issue. A lot of states are doing this. This is not rocket science. We do this in all sorts of laws. The FEC's, you can think of 25 federal agencies that are bipartisan, that have staggered terms to try to, you're not ever going to remove all of it, but there's ways to structure this to at least reduce the amount of partisanship.
Or balance it.
At least balance it, right? So I agree, as long as there's partisanship in any of these offices, you're going to get some of that playing, which emphasizes the point, can we try to construct, there are numerous models, independent entities that'll look critically at these issues. And by the way, not just at legislators, at lobbyists, at special interests, at all of the issues around campaigns, to make sure that the public at least knows what's going on. And, you know, and for folks looking at, you know, at the very least have a clean database that's easily searchable by the media so people can at least shed light on it. Right now, I mean, I'm surprised some of this, I know this all had to be leaked because it's impossible for these guys to actually find this stuff on the website. It's very difficult unless you pour through records and know how it works and know what the timetables were. So we can do better, and I think some independence is what's needed.
There you go. Up next, we get a preview of the Albuquerque stop of the hit program Antiques Roadshow.